No, my little dog, by the way, this little nugget, this little 5-pound Morky nugget.
Oh,
He wants to participate so much. He also really wants the food and fries that I have here. He wants to just, there you go. See, that's he's very food motivated.
yeah, no, same.
So, all right, welcome to episode 3 of Geek Speak. Today we have a special guest, Sin. Sin,
Hey,
how's it
everybody.
going?
It's going great, dude. I'm just kind of, in the middle of a lot of stuff right now. I know we had some kind of trouble over the past week trying to nail down some time for this, but I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really happy to, kind of chat with you about some of the geeky topics and the geeky things that we're all into. You know, flesh and blood. Our daily personal lives in the experience and the never-ending battle of the IT world and all of the fun stuff that comes from that, the daily route.
Oh, 100%. So, I think the very first question that I kind of wanted to circle back on for my own personal understanding is, I know we've met in person at least once.
Yes.
And I believe that was in Indianapolis, Indiana at the, I guess what,
It was,
about over
calling,
a year ago.
It was calling. It was
Yeah,
calling
yeah.
Indianapolis. Yeah.
And the reason I remember this so well is because one of the shticks that I do when I meet people, especially in the community, is I have them sign baubles. And I was looking through my binder and I was like, hey, I know I got this thing somewhere. So there, I think this is the correct one for
That's
you.
me. That's
it's
it.
like, I got it. It's safe and sound on a page with a bunch of other people that I met around that same time. So I'm going to continue to fill out my little collection of baubles and trinkets of community members as we go along. But yeah, I wanted to make sure that I was kind of on the same page of when we first met, because the game was different really at that time frame. And now what, it's 3, 4, 5 sets later at this point.
Oh, I mean, we might be maybe one or two beyond that even. I mean, calling Indianapolis, that was all the way back.
It was over a year ago. I know
Outsiders.
I met.
Had just been Outsiders
Spoiled.
spoilers.
Yeah, that was it.
Outsiders spoilers started showing up at that event. My memory is this good. That's when they showed the spike with blood rot, spike with frailty. That's when the spikes in like the codex.
Yeah, because
Marvel
I think you have a short on YouTube which I think is doing really well that has like the Marvel, if I recall, where you were seeing that.
So the kind of the story behind that was that I do a lot of collaboration with Green Tree Sports Cards here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's my local game store. My buddies does a lot of Flesh and Blood stuff there. And the Realm Games kind of partners with Green Tree since, we're in Pittsburgh, they're out in Ohio. We're relatively close enough to each other that we kind of, we link up every now and again and do stuff. So I was there that day and I went to Keith at the Realm and I was like, can I take a video of this guy for a YouTube short? And Keith's like, yeah, sure. Do you want to hold it? And I'm like, I don't know if I want to hold it. Like, I was like, I might start running. but no, that was, I believe, the first time, or one of the first times, that event specifically, the Realm Games got to spoil that, and they let me do a little video on it. It was really cool.
That's awesome. And I met a lot of very interesting people at that event. And actually, it's a kind of a weird side tangent in the IT world, right? Like,
sure.
I had a hard drive malfunction at some point, and I thought I lost most of that footage because at one point, anybody in IT, or basically anybody in computers, knows that hard drives are like triples in Star Trek. They just multiply. And like at one point or another, I had like a stack of hard drives, and then somehow or another, I think one of them just kind of crashed, or I might have dropped something on one of them. It sucks. But anyways, I finally refound some of that, and actually I think I have an unreleased, I think I interviewed Carolina at that event, and I finally found that footage, so I'm hoping to get that re-edited and get out there. I even found, I think there was somebody that opened an alpha box, I believe, at that event as well. So I'm hoping that I can maybe, piece that stuff back together. And even though it's kind of old news, it'd be kind of fun to just bring that stuff to light because it was just exciting to have. But
yeah, I mean, it's history of the game now. Like,
it's canon, right? That's the
it's lost footage from kind of like, I don't want to say like the early days, but like a lot of that like beginning era,
Okay, so you say beginning days, right? But if you think about it, right, we're on set, I think technically 14 is Rosetta. There's an asterisk there because do you count history packs? Do you count the Blitz decks? Like, there's some kind of gotchas. But truthfully, if you really say, okay, 14 is Rosetta that has been announced, we only know a very few amount of cards, that technically means the first 50% of the game are the first 7 sets.
Right. Which, okay. When you put it into that perspective, that's wild to think about.
Which, that basically is, I think, up to Uprising, or technically, again, History Pack 1, depending on how you look at it. So that's why I'm like, the game is still new enough, but it's also aged like a good fine wine, in my opinion, because, like, we're starting to see the influx of Magic players. I'm starting to see other people that I have a couple friends that I've been teaching how to play Flesh and Blood. They came over and I actually filmed some just, me kind of demoing how to play 2 Blitz decks. And he really enjoys the game. So that's kind of a neat little change, because as he's kind of realized Magic has become more and more expensive with their collector boxes, the appetite to come into Flesh and Blood has really been pretty interesting, because he hasn't had to spend that much money on some of the cards, and plus I can just give him all the bulk he needs to be able to build 80% of his deck. So that was kind of an intriguing transfer, and he's selling 1 or 2 high-end Magic cards, right? 1 dual land or 1 Gaia's Cradle. That's $400, $500, $600 depending on which one. That'll get you 2, 3, 4 boxes, or again a full suite of equipment for specific heroes. Non-gold foil, non-extent, like the player's
just like
versions.
Having what you need to play.
Exactly.
That kind of deal. And that seems to be like a really good quote-unquote deal, because I mean, you get longevity out of the equipments in this game. Like you do. You have the ability to kind of like, shuffle some things around, like the generic equipments, like Balance of Justice, Providence, like that aspect is that was kind of one of the draws for me to begin with, coming in as a former Yu-Gi-Oh player and a former Magic player, having played both of those games throughout various stages of my life, settling into Flesh and Blood kind of like it was kind of like it was a new thing, it was a new dynamic, kind of fit my tastes a little bit better for like the here and now of who I am here and now. And the growth is great. It seems to me, and I'm a very community focused, like local community focused player. I help my local community as much as I possibly can. I help LGSs as much as I possibly can, get events going, running. And what really sticks out to me is that it seems like every set that gets announced, we end up with at least two, maybe 3 max new players coming in from, say, Magic or formerly Yu-Gi-Oh or some other game. Or it's their first TCG and they say, hey, I saw this online, I saw this on Twitter, I saw this, wherever I saw it, and I'm interested in setting up and playing. And it just seems like over time, it just keeps going on. Like, Rosetta got announced. A week later, there were 2 new players at our LGS asking me to learn how to play the game. And I think that's just a great thing to see.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, my doggy wanted to say hi, apparently.
Hello, doggy.
He climbed into my arm as I was sitting here. Yeah, the joys of fun pets. But yeah, the intriguing thing to me is, well, I am not as in tune anymore with my local scene, mostly because I've been fairly busy, especially, in the world of trying to create content or trying to manage anything else. Time is pretty important, and, kind of getting into the day job piece. I work IT, you work IT from what I've gathered. And sometimes we just get stuck on projects, or I've been stuck on a certain project where it's requiring a lot of after hours work, and I've had to do a lot of, things that essentially prevent me from making these commitments to go to like an armory and be there for, 4 or 5 hours theoretically. But that's one of the reasons I really like Blitz, or even now I'm enjoying a little bit of Commoner and Clash, because the games are much shorter. And back, not Fab related, but when I was really big into 40K, even Star Wars Legion, those are miniatures games for those that may not know on the other side of the screen here. Those games, and even Infinity is another example. I played the smaller skirmish size, but I had armies that were in the 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 point range that would take, 4 to 6 hours to play if you really wanted to. But it's so hard to commit that time. I think that's my number one struggle, is I'm trying to find a balance between the time to be able to do fun stuff, enjoy the game, play the game, but also figure out how to make the content, find things I'm wanting, which, that's the balance in my life I'm trying to come to. Or as the new set with Zen would say, I'm trying to find my inner Zen with the balancing act between that. So
Yeah, no, I mean that's completely relatable, man. I do work in IT as well. I work on a smaller, more like dedicated project team, but like, we do a lot of critical functions, and when push comes to shove and I get the phone call, I've got to be there.
Yeah, even in the middle of this, if I were technically to get a phone call that says, "Hey, system down," I'd be like, "Hey, deuces, I gotta go. We gotta figure this out later."
We'll
like,
figure it out. Yeah, no, dude, I completely get it. There was an armory, I think it was actually because I was playing some Star Wars Unlimited for a little bit.
Oh, nice.
So the
That's
way
a
that
fun
we had
game
it,
too. I got some back there.
It's a very fun game. I saw your the Vader stuff. What happened was it was like a Monday night, and the way we have it stacked is like Monday night's Star Wars Unlimited, Tuesday night's Flesh and Blood at GSC, which is Green Tree Sports Cards. And Monday night came around, and I actually roll into the LGS, and I'm like, "Hey guys, how's it going?" And then I get a phone call from my boss being like, "Things are down," and I'm like, "Bye guys, see you later." And I got back in my car, went back home, and I just remember that next day me being like, I think I'm in the clear. I go to try and sneak a couple games in on Armory night, and say something different happens, and I'm like,
sure,
see you later guys, see you again. So like it was just a very hectic time, and that's a very recent example of just how the time, like committing the time to it and committing the time to making content on top of that,
100%.
It takes a lot of time, and most folks that are watching the content don't, they might not always see that behind the scenes, and that's fine, but it's just there's a lot of work that goes into this stuff.
Here's a fun anecdotal side tangent. So
yeah.
Origins just wrapped up, right? And at Origins there was an Alpha Clash event, and I got to meet several people, like Logan from Flesh and Pod, Michael Hamilton was there, Mansant was there, Brody, or not Brody, I'm sorry, you had oh my gosh, who else was there? There was tons of people. It's the other half of the Manor podcast. It's Michael and oh my god, why am I spacing his name? Roger. Yeah. Roger, I am so sorry. I apologize. But this actually weirdly ties back into it. He asked me, he was like, "Hey, are you still doing anything with Flesh and Blood?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm making content," because he hadn't seen me at any armories or I hadn't been to any local events, right?
Gotcha.
So when you're so focused on these bubbles as an example of things you're doing, right, you are still technically doing things that may overall still help the game or help your community, but you might be siloed within a compartment of somebody else that you're doing things in different lanes, but you don't really know that each other exists. And I've noticed that even for some YouTube content, I've seen some folks that have kind of fallen off the kind of YouTube train, but then have come back, right? And then you had new people pop up. I've seen a lot of recent suggestions in my newsfeed for Magic players that I think are kind of in the Magic sphere that are saying, "I'm trying Flesh and Blood for the first time now." And they're making content. And it's intriguing to see some of these people come in, especially at their subscriber counts, right? Like I'm still, I'm an absolutely small microscopic speck in the giant fish of the ocean of sea of content creators, right?
Sure.
And
same.
Like there are people that I've seen that have 4, 5, 10,000 subs, and then when they talk about it, it's like, wow, their video only gets this percentage of things. And when you start mathing out, I try not to do all the analytical stuff, but my brain loves in the IT world. I love the analytics.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh well, what's the retention ratio? How many have they actually got? What's their if you take the amount of videos they have and divide it by their subscribers, what are they getting average per video? All that weird stuff that means absolutely nothing to anybody, but at the same time, you're kind of like, it's a weird metric you try to like measure yourself against. It's probably a bad thing to try to do, but anyways, it's all these events, now they're going to be at Gen Con. Flesh and Blood's going to be there, so I'm hoping to. I don't know, are you attending Gen Con by any chance?
I am not attending Gen Con, but I've got people like within my circle that are
nice.
I
love it. It's here in my backyard, so like for me it's 10 minutes down the road, and every year I'm like I'm spending time, going there. So this will be exciting. I'm going to try to document some of what Flesh and Blood's booth looks like and how that kind of turns out.
Awesome.
See what I can pull off with that.
Look forward to that. That's cool. That's rad.
So when did you get into? I know we met in Indy, just kind of around Outsiders pre-release. But how long have you been in Flesh and Blood in general?
So I've been in Flesh and Blood since the U.S. launch of Monarch. With my first actual pre-release having been Tales of Aria.
Nice.
So I'm a little bit, I've been in it for a bit. I think that was probably around July 2022, I think.
Okay. I know that if I look at my gym account, the very first official, I think, pre-release I went to was the Monarch pre-release.
Okay.
But at my LGS, I was able to get in at the tail end of, and it's really gray because I don't quite remember how this worked out. But I fell in love with Dash because that's who I saw. So it was Arcane Rising, but it was like right when Crew, but it wasn't Crew first. It was almost like Arcane Rising Unlimited came out and Crew Unlimited was there, but there was no Arc first. There was no Crew first. So I missed the boat on the whack, original stuff, C'est la vie, whatever. I'll never own a full alpha set. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
But, I'm working on my set collecting for my Unlimiteds and stuff because, that's one thing I'm passionate about. But
sure.
The sets in general, I think it was probably somewhere around the same time. We probably, honestly, if we were in the same community, would have probably seen each other right around the same time coming in.
Yeah, no, it would have been around the same time. Like for me, I helped, like there were a lot of players that were playing the game at like a higher level or getting into playing it at a higher level. Pat Eshe being one of those players, Charles Dunn being one of those players, our U.S. Last year's U.S. Nats sent my girl Briar into the sun. Yeah, thanks, Charles. But Charles used to be local to us and local to our area, so when he would have time, he would come play with the community and stuff. Sure. But there was like a more competitive side of the local community that was around, but they weren't like, it wasn't like a cohesive like ground up. We're trying to get a store to support this fully and have armories every single week, down to the wire. And I remember I was at a convention. It wasn't even a TCG convention. I was just at a convention, and I think I was like starting to feel fatigued on Magic a little bit. And I was there, and I came across a box of Monarch.
Nice.
On just some random table surrounded by a bunch of other junk. And I was like, that looks cool. How much for it? And I think the guy, and like, don't quote me on this, but I think the guy sold it to me for like $50. He was like, I don't want this. Just take it.
Excellent.
And it was Monarch Unlimited. I looking back on it, like, I understand it now. It was Monarch Unlimited. He was like, yeah, just take it, dude. Here's some promos with it or whatever. And I was like, all right, cool. So that box actually sat on my shelf for like a month.
Nice.
And I didn't even touch it. I went to the LGS one day, mentioned that I had a box of it to one of the guys, and I was like, do you want to try drafting this? Like, we can look up the rules, get some people, maybe just do some test drafts. And we did, played a couple games. I think it was after like the first game we played at this LGS. First game we played, we were like, okay, we're in. Like, I am so in on this. So then, he was an employee at the LGS, took it back to the main boss man. Main boss man signed the place up for armories, signed him up for everything. And then we just started getting people. Like, there were people in the area who wanted to play the game at an armory level, but there were no stores supporting it. We got a store to support it fully. They just kind of took off with it, and that kind of just led us to where we're at now. So, like,
that's awesome.
We kind of being like a semi. I'm hesitant to say that I'm one of like the founding fathers of our local community, but like, it was our group that kind of like sprung up from that in the Pittsburgh area and eventually led to where that whole community is now.
Well, we got a former world champion right here in the backyard of Indianapolis. So,
yeah,
there's been a couple events I've gone to, and I walk in and I'm like, oh, cool. The competition's on, buddy. And it's like, it's always fun when you have that level of talent in the ecosystem, right? And we have some stellar players. Honestly, I'm not good enough to keep up with the armory level, sure. which is why I think found my joy level more in the UPF and probably casual formats. Because man, I'll tell you, it is it's really interesting to learn. I'm definitely more of I used to be, or what's the term? Marry your hero, or love your hero, marry your class, or something. Now is the new terminology, because Dash will soon sail off into the sunset because her living legend points are coming up to the day of reckoning soon. But
she's getting close.
I'm gonna either keep doing mechanologist because I enjoy the class, the mechanics, and the styles. But when Part the Mistveil came out as an example, I attempted to play the illusionist class, and I was just dumbfounded because I guess I'm just not typically used to how that works. I was obviously making very bad choices as far as my one, deck design, and two, ability to like chain things into things with the instant speed components, right? There's that big brain mentality that I was missing for that. I was like, one of these days I need to learn that. So part of hopefully things I'm going to do over the next year is get better at each class, or at least have a better understanding of each class and how they function, outside of the core 2 or 3 that I typically fall in line with, which is like the ninja, probably the more straightforward ones, ninja, warrior, mechanologist, stuff like that. So
yeah, and,
which,
I mean, it's good. I was gonna say, yeah, it's actually, I got a segue off that. So I'm a metal guy. I love metal music. I love like
Ruined Blade.
All yes, it is Ruined Blade. It is absolutely Ruined Blade.
I guessed. That was a guess.
Yeah, no, that was a total guess, but yes, it is absolutely Ruined Blade. I am a diehard ish. I say ish in parentheses, Ruined Blade player. So I started with that Monarch. The hero that immediately stood out to me was Chain, of course.
Awesome.
And so played Chain for just a little bit, because as soon as I got attached to Chain, they were like, "Here's Briar," and I'm like, "Okay, she looks cool." Then I started seeing what people were doing with Briar, and I'm like, "Okay, I think I'm playing Briar." And she actually kind of became my hero for that whole time, from like that right after the Ball Lightning ban, all the way up to when she died. Briar was my hero. She was who I played. And with that, like Vincent came out with Dusk Till Dawn, and I've been kind of on like that journey you've mentioned you might be at like the beginning of, where you're kind of trying to learn other classes just to like see what's out there and experiment with other classes. I did that because Briar, once I lost Briar, I had nothing, so I played a little bit of Ranger, learned how to play Azalea pretty quick. Played a little bit of Ranger, played a little bit of Brute, and did some stuff with that. But that's pretty much where that kind of lied. Like I did nothing but play Runeblade Blade for so long. I didn't really know how the other classes function, and I think that actually made me a better player in the long run. Learning how other decks function and how other decks are doing things, it felt really good to kind of get out beyond that. But yeah, mainly Runeblade Blade player, therefore very excited for Rosetta.
Yeah, and it's neat to see we're kind of coming back to some of these heroes that have left the ecosystem, right? Because some people may or may not have lived through the Starvo yeeting himself into living legend status, right? But there are other individuals that did get to experience that whole thing, and honestly, like you said with Briar and Chain, some of these heroes just the game interactions as a mechanologist player, as just a taking the whole slice of the cake across the board, saying my entire experience in Flesh and Blood, basically living that class, it's ebbed and flowed. I've had more fun times and less fun times. Ice was a nightmare for me, right? Like I just couldn't do much. So it's intriguing to see the ebbs and flows, which obviously metas change in games, but this living legend system really appears to be doing its job quite well, actually, and I'm glad to see that. The roster is really large. I was actually just talking about this the other day with somebody local here, and one of the crazy things to me is that we're getting to the point where, especially if they keep releasing new heroes, the game roster, or like if you were to go into the idea of this is essentially a like a beat 'em up combat game, Mortal Kombat, side scroll, whatever, Street Fighter. We're at over 20. It says 27 in CC. With 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 in living legend status, and we have 34, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 41. We have 42 in Blitz with 7 in living legend, and then we have obviously coming up for strike decks. You got Rosetta heroes coming out that are all new. So sooner or later, I don't know if there's a magic number they're going to try to keep at, but I'm kind of curious how that'll turn out.
Yeah.
How did I know we talked a little bit about the classes and stuff, but I guess you do both content creation and help your local stores. So if you had to pick like 1 or 2 things that you enjoy in Flesh and Blood, what would be your kind of pinnacles of what you hope to continue doing?
For starters, I hope to continue working with my LGS green tree. We've got some projects whenever there's a need for them to have anything that's kind of content related, myself.
I saw you on their stream recently. I think That one you guys were opening all the packs for Part the Misfit.
Yep.
You were there ripping stuff with them.
Yeah, we did that for Bright Lights. We did that for Part the Misfit, where, you know, it's just store break for singles and all that fun stuff. We definitely plan on doing it for Rosetta, so that's something we're working on. But you know, beyond that, even some like the advertisements for events that we have planned and things that we got coming up, you know, I kind of get called into action to assist with that stuff alongside you know, another group of content creators that are in our local community.
Nice.
We've all been kind of collaborating and working together. We have a pretty big one coming up at the end of the summer here, and we're trying to just make sure everything's good there. And I'm hoping, you know, like I can get all of my stuff to a point where, all right, these deliverables are ready to roll, ready to go, so I can start making some Rosetta content.
Nice.
Having been a Runeblade player and all that, I really want to get back in there on my personal channels and really start hammering away at that stuff.
Well, if you're up for it, I'd love to see a how to play Runeblade 101 for dummies, so that I can watch it and understand some of the things that I'd want to go through. So that's maybe a nice fun content nugget for you.
There's these. So if you play a non-attack action and then you play an attack action, something happens.
Got it. Okay.
And that's how to play Runeblade 101. Oh, and swing Rosetta Thorn.
But that's banned, isn't it?
Not if the judge isn't looking.
Oh, okay. Got it. Just Rosetta.
You know, just slide the Rosetta in.
Are they going to bring it back, you think?
Oh, if I had to like spitball some crazy theory, I don't think Rosetta is going to come back. However, I do think Duskblade is going to come back, but not as the Duskblade we saw in Aria. It's going to be like a Duskblade, something different.
Okay.
Because if you look at Florian's art, it looks like Florian is pulling what appears to be similar to Duskblade out of like a tree root or something like that.
That was
so I was like, I saw that and I was like, I think I know what they're doing. They're bringing Duskblade back, but they're not really bringing Duskblade back.
So Min-Max will have to collect these new ones then.
Yeah, Min-Max, sorry, collection to 0. Don't know what to tell you.
What's your thought on the First Strike stuff? Like that's been kind of a hit topic amongst folks recently. What's your take on where the direction of that might go? Are Blitz, decks going to be the way of the Dodo Bird? I mean, in this set we have both, like the way I'm understanding it. But what's your thoughts? Like,
so I think I like the First Strike product as maybe like a convention type of thing, which is what they're doing. From my understanding, is it's debuting at Gen Con, I believe.
Correct. From what I understand, it's debuting at Gen Con, and it will be available at LGSs to purchase as basically like your first adventure into Flesh and Blood, like the Magic decks where it used to be like Goblin versus Elves, or the two Planeswalkers, or some generic version of like, here's the absolute basic to get into the game to play. But that seems to be, in air quotes, different than the 3 Blitz decks that would come in the Rosetta long box, which is like the Part the Misfail collection, or the UPF variation, which has the professor's stuff in it.
Absolutely. And I mean, I could see the First Strike decks having kind of similarities to the structuring of maybe the Ira decks, right? But it is a Blitz legal deck, so to speak, versus the Ira decks, which, outside of the welcome decks not being legal to begin with because there are only 30 cards, Ira is also not a legal hero to play in Blitz. So you kind of get to this point where you're in kind of an interesting conundrum where you could give a new player a welcome deck, say like, hey, this is how you play the game, teach them how to play the game with it, and kind of maybe their goal is to have kind of like a line of the First Strikes and say like, this is like the best segue if you're just really wanting to get in ground level, and maybe those cards in the First Strike decks are like as simple as, here's how you do an instant, here's how you do an attack reaction, here's how you play a card. You know what I mean? Versus the in Rosetta Blitz decks, which maybe play more into the hero's actual like synergies with cards from Rosetta. So I don't know how they're gonna make them. I think it's a great idea. I like the delivery of there being a hero in the First Strike product that is not directly in the Rosetta set, but is still adjacent to it.
I think that was pretty smart.
How we have Terra. That was a really smart thing, and that's also really interesting because it kind of gives them the ability to create heroes that maybe wouldn't have otherwise made it into the core set itself.
Yeah, because if it's not draftable or they don't have to worry about it, they can maybe tweak
Sure.
the ability. And it sounds like since they're young, right, they're going to affect Blitz more than they would affect CC.
Right.
So they have they have a little bit of a maybe a knob they can turn, right? They can do some more interesting stuff because if it's not affecting CC, you know, they don't have to worry as much maybe about that, but they can also just keep it young only because there's plenty of young only individuals that exist that are not currently in an adult form.
Right.
And that's, you know, also completely separate from the fact that, you know, they could lock things down with the word legendary, or they could tie it to a talent, or they could tie it to a class. They could technically there's, you know, kind of like the bolt on for if there's ever a piece of equipment, which would be a very my crazy speculation on Rosetta would be a piece of equipment that bolts on maybe a class subtype or a class talent. But I've been told that could also break fundamentally some parts of the game, such as presenting decks and having your hero there, and if you don't use that piece of equipment, you know, now you'd have to say like these cards only, you know, do this. Their subtype's not actually ice, but then maybe they do an additional thing that says if you're, you know, have essence of ice. Obviously ice isn't in the set, but I don't know why I'm fixated on ice. You know, screw frostbites. So mad at them. But maybe it does something different. So
yeah, no, and I mean, like I dabble with Guardian a little bit in Blitz just for fun. I play a little bit of Victor in Blitz here and there, and I really like Earth as a talent. So seeing Terra in this first strike decks, like even as an enfranchised player, like I'm gonna buy one just so I got them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's good when you have a product that can speak to both an entry level and a higher level. And you know, I'm not talking, you know, in reference to the armory decks and whatever the distro is for that, whatever. I'm not getting into that. However, in the sense of like the first strike decks, it seems like that's a product that, you know, like some people will grab them if they want them and they're the enfranchised player, but you know, they're better to just be like, oh, you're a new player, here, try these, and you go ahead with it. Like, I'm happy we have that, and like I said, I think I'm more just excited to see them introducing new heroes that are not part of the actual draft set, but kind of like blocked in with the theme of the set.
So do you think
having them launch?
Do you think the cards that'll be in that first strike deck will they possibly be completely the same as what's in the Rosetta set, or do you think they'll be mechanically different or unique, which would then drive some people to want to buy those for like CC decks or something? Or do you think they tried to avoid that whole buyout mentality component?
I think they might try to avoid it with this one. The only reason I say that, and I mean, it's not a confident answer, but I mean, we don't have an elemental guardian in CC.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's already like one half of the block away. And you know, Aurora is in the main set itself. So
if it's the same hero, right? We don't know if it's the same hero yet.
Oh, that's true. We don't,
because there's two different pieces of artwork, and
there are.
I've heard, again, speculation, rumor mill, woo-woo alarm. You know, the low
tinfoil hat.
I think it's the young hero. They were saying that like the graveyard or something to do with the number of cards in the graveyard to trigger it, maybe lower because it's blitz versus in the you know, CC variation, the adult. They might actually put you know, 4 or 5, you know, as the number to have to hit, because the games go longer and it makes that ability a little bit harder to hit, but then also more, I guess, different across the whole spectrum.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. No, I mean, I could totally see that. And like I said, like with it, I think it's hard to say whether or not they'll put individualized like cards or cards that are exclusive to the first strike decks in the first strike decks. You know, what's nice, or what's another thing I notice usually is the wording, especially with like the armory decks, right? They do tend to say when something is going to contain functionally unique cards.
Yep.
And I don't quote me on that, but I think I did not see that for the first strike decks. I could be wrong though.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to appear that way. And the other, you know, I've harped on this in other ones, so I'll just say it and get over with it. But, you know, I'm hoping that, you know, like the 2-player Dory versus Rhino deck, right? A playmat or something. But it sounds like these are just, again, the 40 card hero, whatever, just very basic. I don't think that they'll have, you know, Riddler Man just texted me. Yo, Josh, I'll talk to you later. Oh, I love it. I love that every once in a while I get these random texts and it's just like a response to something I sent like a week or two ago, and it's like that's excellent. So when you watch this, this was the exact time you texted me. You can figure that out, buddy. So
go outside and look at the stars and figure out when it correlates.
100%. Where was it? Oh yeah, so yeah, I don't know. That Josh made me think of now collections or collectability, because he's really big on the collection side. So I know I dabble in a little bit of everything. What do you think, like, maybe for people getting in the game right now, or if this is the first thing they ever watch, which thanks if this is, by the way. I don't know why you're watching me first, but I thank you. Congrats, 2 thumbs up. Go find other people as well and listen to stuff. But if somebody's new to the game, what would you recommend? How do you this conversation I just had with a gentleman for Magic, by the way, that I went through, and I tried explaining every hero in a very basic sense of like what a ninja does, what a guardian does, what a mechanologist does. How I tried to explain all those. How do you explain maybe to somebody getting into the game, what they should try to look for, or maybe should they try to play and collect, or do a little bit of both? Because 2.0 changed a lot of stuff, so that's a lot in a bubble there. But feel free to go any direction with that you want. That's just
like when it comes to like newer players getting into the game, I first kind of just be like come in, sit down in an armory, whatever. If you have a question of like, if you're struggling to figure out what hero you want to play, right? Maybe don't look at it as necessarily the hero itself, but maybe the class, right? And kind of like explore what's underneath those umbrellas, and explore maybe the play style. And that takes a lot of research, and it really does. It takes a lot of experimenting and finding out what you really like to play in this game. But it shouldn't feel like a chore, and it's one of those things where it's like that's actually part of the experience. Like that is part of the experience of getting into Flesh and Blood to begin with, is finding where you lie and what you like to play and how you like to play.
What's a beginner-friendly class? If you could recommend 3 to 5 classes, what would you recommend for somebody that maybe is brand new to TCGs that never played, or maybe somebody hypothetically that's been like Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, or Pokemon that is a little bit more experienced that would come in? What 5 classes would you kind of pick?
So right off the rip, I mean, I would say Brute is one of them. Brute's pretty straightforward. Ninjas are pretty straightforward as well. Depending on the ninja, though, it depends on the ninja. Like if you look at Fi, right? Fi's pretty, low to the ground, pretty simple to grasp kind of thing. Maybe can teach you a little bit about attack reactions and stuff like that. But nobody really does that better than Warriors, and Warriors are probably another class. But once again, it kind of depends on the hero underneath that layer.
Sure.
Bolton, obviously I'm not going to hand a new player a Bolton deck and say, here you go, hope you can figure out the combo.
Monarch almost made me give up on Flesh and Blood, because I was like, during that pre-release, was so confused with like, what do you mean soul? What? Like,
what's a soul? But yeah, no, like Warrior, Brute. I honestly, I still think what makes Welcome to Wraith such a great set is the classes and the heroes that it introduced. Which, by the way, none of those heroes have LL'd yet.
Oh, I know. I'm actually tracking a lot of this on a spreadsheet that I've been trying to figure out. I call it the MTBL instead of MTBF in the IT world. Meantime between failure. It's meantime between living legend status. So like the month they were released, and then the month that somebody has living legend, I've been trying to track those spreads across all the sets. So. Oh,
that's interesting. That's cool. I'd like to see. I'd be curious about that data. That's really really neat. But yeah, I think WTR really did a great job at being kind of the intro set to Flesh and Blood, in the sense of all of the heroes within that set are very straightforward, very beginner friendly, very, I don't want to say like they're vanilla or bland, but they are the heroes. They're like the strong foundation, right?
Sure.
And I mean, I'd say like you have a nice little pool to pick from. You got Brute, you have Warrior, you got Ninja, you have Guardian. Now, like, while WTR may be harder to come by these days,
heavy hitters filled that gap. Really, they brought almost all those back. Yeah, exactly.
It did. Yep. And with that being said, like, Sets like Heavy Hitters are a great starting point. Outsiders is a good introduction to Ranger. If I had to put my finger on it, I'd say maybe arguably better than Arcane Rising was for Azalea. But that's only because we have Riptide and we have Azalea in there.
Sure. Well, and you had both Katsu came back in Outsiders as well.
Yeah.
You had a bunch of kind of the OG people get sprinkled in throughout these last couple of sets, which I think that is a neat factor, Flesh and Blood, that I don't think a lot of people have respected enough. That they're not just randomly creating new heroes time and time again. They're taking the same heroes and sprinkling them back into future sets and bolting on like a car upgrade or just something you want to add. They're giving you a little bit of extra stuff you can leverage, and I like that.
I think that's great. Like, I know it became a giant meme on Twitter that Rhinar has returned or whatever it was in Heavy Hitters, but I think maybe not as much in the limited side of things, but it gave him a lot of tools that are really useful, especially with KO doing a sprint, or was doing a sprint prior to Part the Mistveil. But it's just really cool how they know that the world of Flesh and Blood, like the game world, is a place where there are these characters that do exist, they do run around, and they pop up at random places, and if they're in the right place at the right time, they end up in a set because they're there.
So I'm hoping to kick off. There was a lore podcast that I had started about a year or so ago, and because lore has kind of been a little bit sporadic, I kind of life got in the way and some other things, but I want to jump back into it. But one of the crazy things about that is if you look at the map, somebody had hinted that kind of like the World of Warcraft map or something, there's that part on the side that is zoomed out where you cannot see past it. So we might be zoomed way in on the World of Wraith right now, but then later it might zoom out and you might see this whole new land where you have other, again, classes coming from, stuff like that. And I cannot wait to find out what happens with that.
I mean, there's some interesting stuff in that too, because we have, believe it or not, we've actually seen maybe seen aspects of that already. Like the Courage token having that Spartan looking character on it.
100%.
The whole Spartan theme, it fits the Heavy Hitters thing, but Heavy Hitters didn't take place in a specific place, right? Heavy Hitters was just kind of hey, this is this is just some random arena. But yeah, if you look at the left side of that map there and you go further out, there could be more to Wraith. Right, and that being said, we've kind of seen aspects of okay, maybe these people aren't exactly from this area of the map, right?
Because we technically have covered Savage Lands, Solana. We've kind of gone to Volcor technically with Dynasty, but not officially. Really, we got to Monastery. We've now been in Mysteria. We've been in Aria, Metrics, and the Pits, right? So we've circled around. Maybe this next set, technically, I mean, I know it's an Aria, but maybe there's an actual Volcor set. But if not, maybe they bolt on again, bring stuff in. So.
Yeah, I mean, everything. It definitely seems like things are in the game story. I believe they're looking for right now. I'm not sure if they have, but I know that they were hiring some lore writers.
Because I think that the ones that were there, they were volunteer or something. I think.
Yeah, they're freelancers.
Yeah.
So it was, so that that kind of explains the slow trickle of lore. But I know that, with Rosetta, it seems like they have a premise to it, and they've got all this stuff, so it's going strong. I just wasn't expecting whenever. I was speculating we were going to get another a Rune Blade and Wizard set. When you look at the fact that we only have Kano as a wizard in CC, and you look at the fact that Vincent and Viserai are the only ones in CC right now for Rune Blade, you go back at it, and I sat there and I was like, okay, well, maybe we get a true Demonastery set, and that true cool. Demonastery set is the Rune Blade Wizard set. But then they throw the curveball that we're actually going back to Aria. And these are elementals. So when that happened, I was so stoked.
And another crazy thing to think about, right, is we're looking at this map and, we kind of got some ideas of some different things happening. At some point, I think James White said that the Monastery story arc was a 3-part story arc. So we've had Monarch, we've had Dusk Till Dawn, what's the third one? When will that be in 2025? Because maybe that's something that's coming up next year. That's one of those proposed sets. If they stick to the 3 or 4 sets a year, maybe that is one of those sets. Will be back to the Monastery next year.
Yeah.
And that's maybe where we get Necromancer or one of the other fun classes, right? Like something that'd be really exciting.
No, absolutely. I mean, like,
what future class would you want to see? Like, if you could pick something, even if it's not technically from the lore book or something that they've quote unquote talked about, is there a certain class you would love to see in this game? Like Paladin or something?
I would like to see, like, I mean, we kind of have it with, like, Illusionist, and Dromai kind of was almost there, but I would really like to see, like, maybe, like, a Savage Lands themed, like, Beast Tamer class, where they, like, like, yeah, okay.
Oh, hold on. Only because you said that. I used to play WoW, and
right.
That was my old... It was the Beastmaster class. There was a cat that used to exist in this, and I loved it. But I would love to see a Beastmaster Tamer too, or something like that.
Yeah, I'd like to see something like that. And if we're talking...
It was Fury, dude. I don't know.
And if you really look at it, like, you look at it through the lens of all of the classes we have, like, we're getting close to quote unquote due for a new class.
Yeah, I think we are, and I forget what it is in the lore book. There's a page. I have a printed copy around here somewhere because I've never actually got the official lore book because they're pretty hard to get.
Right.
But at one point or another, a PDF was rolling around, so apologies if that's inappropriate to have printed that. But during my lore cast, I was marking all over the pages and checking stuff. But
yeah,
there are definitely, I think, 2 or 3 classes that are listed in there that we have not seen yet. Alchemist being one of them, I think.
Yep.
Necromancer being one. I don't remember the others off the top of my head, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and, like, as time goes on, we'll be here 10 years from now, and pirate class was just introduced, and, like...
It's funny you talk about pirate class, because,
Pirates!
Yeah, that's a Trench of Sunken Treasures. I cannot wait for that to become a thing.
Yep.
That'll skyrocket that card pretty hardcore. So.
Oh, yeah.
So... Dang, I'm still coughing like crazy here. What's your thoughts on PvE? Is that a format that you're looking forward to, or that you hope is something that you'll want to experience? Or
when it finally arrives, yes, very, very much looking forward to something like that. I mean, like, I played D&D a good chunk of my life. Like, I love that tabletop where let's go on an adventure kind of thing and shenanigans ensue. Like, and I feel like, everybody at LSS, those developers, like, they're gamers. They know what PvE needs to be, and they know it needs to be something that is very story driven, like that in that regard. Like, so with that being said, like, I think it's, I'm very excited for the day that comes, though. The whole meme, the joke of when's PvE coming. Like, I've been hearing about PvE since I started playing the game. Like,
well. And I know you won't have seen this because it hasn't been released yet. It'll come out on Monday of this next week. That'll be episode 2 of this. I talk about some PvE stuff in there with Ashenwing TCG.
Yeah.
And there's a guy. He's on the Teklo Crow. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's made a custom PvE module. And if possible, maybe I could get me, you, and him and a couple other people together, and we can demo that or play that out, because it's intriguing. But the quote that I've come to the conclusion of, right, is while these other people have created their own versions of PvE using the fab ecosystem, so to speak, you only get one time to come to market, and if that's a flop, if it's not done or polished enough, people will have a bad taste with it. So I'm actually happy that Flesh and Blood has waited as long as they had to release PvE, because I'd rather it be really good versus, like, coming out and saying, they could have done this better or that better. I try to curve my expectations because I can expect a lot, but it also depends on, like, look at the social play kits, right? Are social play kits triggering in a lot of these areas? I don't really know if a lot of people are triggering those social play kits, even though that's what I would really like to go play. Right. I know that the bulk of folks in my area, very competitive, they do want to play more CC, not as much Blitz. May or may not be interested in UPF. I know I can talk a few folks into playing that, but it's also, do they want to play it every week? Probably not. So it's this balancing act of trying to figure that stuff out.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I completely get that. Like we have that that kind of like similar dynamic here. We do have a core group that really likes playing UPF, which is nice, and sometimes I'll hop in on those. I do play. I call myself like casual competitive. Like I play, like if there's like a calling nearby, or if there's a battle hardened within a reasonable distance, like I'll go and I will give it my all on the competitive side of things. I'll practice and play with the team. I'll do all that kind of stuff. But, at the end of the day, I'm fine being an Armory Andy, so I'm good with that. Like, and, I love the game. I just love the game. And I think that's what so many players, what just keeps us here is the game evolving and the game growing and just getting to play good games with the people in your local community. Like
in these recent sets, they've really, started. I've always been so excited. I was hyped for Outsiders. I was hyped for Dusk Till Dawn, hyped for Around the Table, Bright Lights, Heavy Hitters, Rosetta, and Part the Mistveil. If every set is more and more hype, at a certain point I'm going to explode. Like, I can't continue to be overly hyped for all of these. So
sure.
I mean, but they're doing such a great job. That's the thing is, when I look at I guess a different perspective of this, I look at the ban list, because I think of games like Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! Where they have an extensive ban list and an extensive, you can't do this or this card comes out very broken. So far, knock on wood, everything has been fairly well balanced. Now, there's obviously a bunch of folks talking right now that they think Zen is overpowered, but I think that maybe there's a possible part that people have missed in my head, because it seems like they would have tested a lot of these cards with other classes, so maybe that's not as bad as people think, but nobody has found the alternate rock paper scissors lizard spot kind of a thing, right? There's got to be an alternate piece that's going to be the haha gotcha to that, because I think that's kind of one of the core pieces I've discovered of Flesh and Blood is there's always a counter to every deck.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy is that there's always some kind of counter, even if a hero was not even thought of when another hero had been released prior. Like,
oh sure,
in vice versa. Like, it's just so crazy. It's like, oh well, this makes like a hero could come out and dominate the field, and then all of a sudden this deck that nobody plays because it's quote unquote situationally bad, that's what's being played to counter it, and it's so crazy. And I like to think of it even as like the dynamic between Enigma and Vincent, right? Where Vincent can make a rune chant unpreventable pretty reliably and force Enigma's board to just die. Like, it's just a very strong counter to a strong hero. And it was, this, like, Vincent came out, what, 3 sets ago at this point? Like,
yeah, in Dusk Till Dawn. Well, and when Rosetta hits, it'd actually be more. Part the Mistveil, Heavy Hitters, Bright Lights, and then Dusk Till Dawn be 4 sets back. Yeah.
And I mean, with Arcane coming into the field, like, we're going to see like Zen squaring off with Florian, and Florian's going to be, maybe building stuff up. So it's just going to take time to see how things pan out.
So what's your thought really cool for Rosetta? Do you think they're going to bring back stuff like null rune equipment, like, variations of that?
I'm not sure. I would think if anything, we maybe see new null rune equipment in the sense of, or like a generic
suite of something, a generic new equipment
like
suite?
Some kind of generic thing. Maybe, I mean, they could even do a new generic keyword, some kind of like generic keyword that works with null rune to a degree. We might see Spell Void come back in some capacity. But it's going to be interesting to see how limited goes for Rosetta in that regard.
Yeah, and I think one of the pieces that's intriguing is, as I've started to listen to other people about the maybe intricacies of Blitz pre-constructed decks playing against each other, I never really thought too much about it because it's never come up much, because we haven't. I bring like a box with me, and at this point there's over 20. So I used to roll like a D20, and then I would say I'm pulling 1 through 12. There's my number 12 deck. I'll pull that out. You roll a D20. Oh, you get number 10. Here's your 10 deck, and we play. That's how we kind of play. So it's completely randomized. But I never really had a situation where an arcane style deck like Kano came up against a deck that had no arcane barrier, and I realized that that is not a good feels good scenario for people. So I was thinking for like some of the blitz decks, I'm gonna have to start bringing around like a stack of spare equipment to have for like, you know, arcane barrier, just to, hey, if you happen to get that, let's let you switch one or two things out so you can at least have some defensive capability. But you know, with Rosetta, you know, they haven't released a lot of cards, but I would assume, especially if arcane is a theme of this set, right? We haven't seen any arcane damage based on the cards revealed so far, which is just the 2 heroes, a couple of specializations, and some other things. So I'm hoping that there is a bunch of there's an ad for Camp Green Tree on here, by the way, on February. So
hey, that's us.
good marketing there, Green Tree. Love it. I was reading the other day that I think February was going to start implementing ads in their site. So
yeah, well, would you look at that? They did.
Yeah, congratulations, it's working. It's check off the IT, you know, confirmed at work box. So
yep. No, that was a fun one. We were sitting in a meeting about the event that one night, and I was like, one of our guys was like, "Hey, February, what if we worked with them to get a banner up on the page?" And we did. It worked, and here we are.
Yeah, if it wasn't so far of a drive, I'd probably come out for some events. But you know, honestly, I think
I get it. I did that drive. I mean, when we went to Indy, we did that drive. So
I drove from here to Baltimore, and that almost killed me. Like, no pun intended, but like, yeah. Sorry, Sloop, man. That room, that first place was a little sketch, buddy. Like, that was I ended up switching from there to a hotel room because I was just a little concerned. I was like, got too many things I need to like. I'm gonna go over here, but hey, let's all hang out together. And you know, it was like, it's even back then, man. Seeing, oh god, man, people I haven't seen, like Tall Timmy and Fluke was there. You know, just so many individuals that that was some crazy times. It still is crazy. I mean,
no, I mean, it absolutely is. It's, you know, it's still going, and I mean, I've been kind of off the traveling circuit for a little bit just because this year, personal life, family everybody in my family decided to get married all in 1 year. So
it gets expensive too. Travel is not cheap. If you're doing it of your own dime, it's
I got 4 weddings this year, so as soon as I saw that coming up on the horizon for 2024, I was like, I think I'm probably grounded for a little bit here. We're gonna be around just doing some local stuff, local fab stuff, but 2025, you know, wheels up. We're out there back at events, hanging out with people, chatting with folks, playing games.
I think I'm going to try to get to Chicago. I think that's one of the events later this year that I might be able to. I can drive there, so should be able to
that's
pull
easy
that
enough.
one off. Pretty.
But yeah,
pretty
man.
close.
No, I mean, I think we have some of our guys going to Chicago. You'll probably see them. They're all wearing black and gold jerseys. So those are our guys. But
I think the only jerseys I have at this point are back on Riddler. He did his Cardboard Warrior jerseys, and I bought one of them. So I have one of those, and I specifically made one that said, I think it's either cracked bobble or my bobble is cracked, just as a joke. Because like I always, so I think I'm gonna wear that to one of these events just to be funny. You know, that'd be kind of cute.
I love that.
Well, out of curiosity, do you want to open a pack? I got some packs here you can choose from.
Yeah, let's open a pack.
So I know that's something fun. Let me.
Oh.
So I have a couple that we can look at. I'll move my microphone out of the way there. There we go. Look at that. Professionalism. Just kidding. So I got a Dust Till Dawn and I got a Welcome to Wraith. Now this one is the Japan print of Welcome to Wraith. Okay. So what's your poison? I figured if I do one pack podcast for the rest of the year, that's 52 packs, which is just over 2 boxes of product in a year.
Okay, so how about let's do, Vincent, Runeblade, let's do Dust Till Dawn.
Dust Till Dawn. All right.
My first spoiler card actually came out of this set. So.
Oh, you've got a spoiler card.
Yeah, I spoiled Deathly Whale.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's going to be a thing of the past soon, I think, with the new spoiler things they're doing.
I think the way that they're doing it now with the premieres, things are going to change a little bit.
All right, what do we got? This is a light instant. You don't care about those. You don't
No, we're gonna just set that aside.
As Logan would say, the cop cards, right? The light cards are
the cop cards.
The cop cards, yeah.
Oh, Soul Cleaver, yeah, that's the card you could play.
Blood Debt, all right, that's nice. Shadow Brute, there you go. That's fun, sweet. Shadow Rune Blade, there you go.
There we go.
Blood Debt, like in general, good, bad. You have to build around it. Like, what's something to think about? Like maybe a tip or trick about Blood Debt.
So in my experience with Chain, it's kind of just like winning at 1 is better than nothing. Like winning at 1 is probably what you're going to do most of the time. And when it comes to Vincent, it's okay. I've got a card with Blood Debt in my Banish Zone. Now is the time for me to panic and make sure I can get it out of there as fast as I can.
Okay.
So it plays off a little bit differently depending on which Shadow Runeblade you're playing. Chain is perfectly fine having a pile sitting in there because he can pretty easily get rid of it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Vincent, a lot of her power lies in holding those cards there, but you got to be careful with it. It's a little trickier than Chain.
There you go.
This is another card you could play.
What about yellows? I see we're getting a lot of yellows in here. And do the Rune Blades really, or any of the shadows, like really yellows, or is that still kind of the redheaded stepchild and Flesh and Blood?
Still kind of weird, yeah. Like, I think the only 2 yellows I'm currently playing in Vincent, I think, is Mauvrian Skies, which is the non-attack action from Crucible of War, and yellow Deathly Whale, because Deathly Whale is probably one of Vincent's best pieces, I guess.
I do want to circle back on one thing. I want more of this kind of stuff. The flavor text. The fear is fear is not the cavern flesh for tonight. We feast with Blasphemet Lady, and it's like Barthomet or whatever. Like that. I want more of that lore type stuff on the card. This one is Lord Sophocles, which he apparently has a whole crazy lore piece in and of itself. And the foil is a Soul Cleaver.
Foil Soul Cleaver. So what's interesting about Dusk Till Dawn is, like, a lot of the cards really seem to play almost as if it was like a draft set, but it's not a draft set. And that was always the strangest thing to me in this set.
Gain 2 life.
Yep.
Poison the Well hates this card now, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Hey, Decimator Great Axe. That's a good card. But yeah, shout out to all the local GSC Dory players who have killed me with that Decimator Great Axe.
You should. One of the things that'd be really fun is to start like signing. Have the people that you knock out, have them sign the card. That
would be neat.
I got this kind of here, but like one of the things, you could. That was a fun old card.
Oh wow.
This is all those. But one of the things I had is when we played some UPF games there at, I think it was Baltimore. The folks that I played against, where's one of them? I had them all sign, like, when we all were done. So
that's awesome.
Sloop, Joe, and Andromeda that was the 3-player in that one. So just something interesting. And at one point, we were trying to get UPF taken off here, so the wife did some altars on staple cards that I was giving out. So like there's a Pummel.
I love that.
Over here I had there's a Sink Below that she did something fun too. Fate Foreseen, and then the Razor Reflex one
that's cool
in there. So, and then
Sloop, that's awesome.
Sloop, I still have your old eye that I bought off you. Yep, it's not gone anywhere.
Just staying right there.
Yeah, I need to get that in a deck soon, because that's one of the things I want to do. Yeah, his Patreon, he sends out these like fun, sign cards. This is basically my binder of every random thing. Like there's my Rudy, hero.
Yeah, the Gem Keeper.
There's a Riddler card that got signed. This is my only piece of artwork I bought off of an artist far.
That's Federico.
I really wish there was some more he had. I mean, there's just so many beautiful things I've seen him do that I'd love to get some more stuff like that. That's one of the main reasons I want to go back to some of the events, because Mark Poole, you mentioned the Outsiders card.
Yep.
This was
Yes, I have one of those. Yep. I got one of those from that Indianapolis event because
So,
it was. We were so shocked because that was the first reveal of quivers for Rangers.
Yeah, the whole offhand or quiver, component. That's what that's from. So.
Yeah, no, that's a good memory. That was cool.
Yeah,
especially since he had them right there, and I think Outsiders wasn't due out for another month or two, maybe even more.
Man-Sant, Red Zone.
Yep.
I think one of these, there's Rudy in here somewhere. Is Rudy, just
yep.
Every person I can think of is probably in this. And then I collect misprints. So if you know about the barcode cards.
Yep. The barcodes.
Yeah, and then if you're an old Magic player, you know about the Charlie medallions.
Yep.
I got one of those in here. I'd love to get some other fun stuff, but yeah, that's just, I don't know. There's all those videos going around about the show me your flesh and blood collection kind of thing.
Yeah.
So in a weird way, I kind of want to do one of those, but at the same time, I don't want to say I don't like to flaunt the crap that I have, but at the same time, it's like I got it and I know I got it, and that's good enough for me. Like
I'm like a notorious playmat collector.
If
there's one thing I end up with more than I need, it's playmats.
There's a couple of playmats. Did you get to sign my playmat? I thought you did.
I think I did. Was it the Visitronic one?
Yes, yeah.
Yes,
so
I signed that at Baltimore.
It's sitting right up here, and it's funny because I had to overpay for that mat to get it because at the time I couldn't find one. I recently found one on eBay that I think I might actually go buy because I really do want to play with one. I don't really want to keep playing with it because I'm noticing that the more I unroll and roll it, it becomes like the signatures are getting a little bit weird.
Right.
But long and short is there are a lot of playmats that exist. Some of them are highly collectible. And some I missed the boat on. I'm still waiting to try to find, I have the world map one. I got the lore book one. But I don't have the Nitro Mechanoid one, which is the big one I really want to find. Or there's the Vitruvian Man, or I guess it's adaptive plating is really what it's called.
Adaptive plating one from Worlds?
I don't know where some of those are. Is there a master site that has all the photos of those somewhere?
I'm gonna have to look it up. But there is a gentleman on Twitter that he built his own playmat tracker. It keeps track of all the playmats that they have ever made or released for armories or events. And I don't know how up to date it is, but I'll have to find that and I'll have to maybe shoot that over to you.
Heck yeah, I'll even tag it in this video when it comes out because that'd be kind of exciting. I mean, just looking around, those and sleeves, right? I have a stack of sleeves over there on site. I got the Kasai, I got the Melody. I somehow landed lucky enough to have a Starvo set of sleeves. I have the the helmet, the Crown of Providence one. But there's a couple of sleeves that I think the Rudy, I have one of his set of sleeves, but there's I have Ophidia, or maybe I know there's Heart of Findel. There's some pretty hard to find sleeves, and I don't know where to get them. So there's some I think you have to either win ticket wise or get their limited edition,
or just get through events specifically.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, it's really cool that they do that. A new kind of quote unquote obsession of mine is all of the location based or event based promos, like the Ravenous Rabble. I'm
very disappointed I haven't been able to get some of those because I haven't gone to those events.
Right.
And the secondary market prices on those are just ungrueling expensive. My
only my big claim is that I managed to get my hands on 4 of the Ravenous Rabbles.
Oh wow!
Way before they spiked like they did.
Are they pretty expensive now?
I think they're around 150, 160 now.
Holy crap! Really?
Yeah, and I got one of them graded. I basically was take whichever one looks the best here and grade it. And I think I got a 9, or I think I got just a regular 9 on that. But I believe the PCG population for that is my one singular 9.
Wow. Yeah, it looks like right now I can get one for light play 129.
Yeah,
and
okay.
Near Mint's 130 plus, but yeah, about 150 is on there. But it is such a beautiful looking card, right?
Yep.
I feel like they spend the time to do the artwork on cards that really mean something will come of it, or they extend the art for specific reasons.
Right. No, I definitely agree with that, and I think I think the Ravenous Rabble having like almost like Runeblade-ish, like signs on it. Like Ravenous Rabble was played in Briar. We're gonna be going into Rosetta. I think it's gonna it might make a comeback with us. Excuse me, some of these new heroes. So who knows? It'll be interesting.
Well, and then there's also the Adjudicator heroes, which I'm a big fan of, but I haven't gotten some of the ones because those judge packs are salty. They are pretty expensive.
Yeah, they are. I've only ever opened one. I gambled on it hard. It was at Battle Hardened Philadelphia, and that Battle Hardened in Philly was actually at a casino.
Oh my!
So we were all feeling pretty like, all right, let's gamble on it. Why not? And I gambled. Thankfully, I made out with it, and I have a judge cash it.
Oh, nice. I
got a judge cash it. I did not get burned on it, but it was almost like a $200 burn, and it's wild, man. It's wild, like how crazy that can go. But,
well, kind of like the Sigil of Solus is beautiful, right? That's the one from Worlds, I think. That's a promo that I don't have. I want one. The Judge promo Gavel of Natural Order, that's another beautiful one. This other Sigil of Solus that I think was something to do with maybe in Singapore. It's the one with the kind of beautiful dragon sculpture in it. Those are fantastic. And then there's, I have the Go Bananas promo, but like it used to be really hard to find. Now it seems like it's not as bad. But I don't think they really, because they banned it in the other formats. It's kind of like not really that useful, maybe. So
it's it's just a for fun card kind of thing.
Smashing Good Times, that was in a judge pack too, apparently. Energy Potion, that's another really beautiful one. When did that come out? Do you know?
That was Pro Tour Los Angeles, I believe.
Really?
It might have been LA. Yeah, Pro Tour LA. And that was one of them. I think it was because I have a buddy who went to LA and he was talking about those. Because he plays Kano, so he wanted his epots for Kano.
I need to also pick up these Tales of Adventures while I still can, because I think Bard's going to be a super fun thing to have, because I don't know if those are ever going to get reprinted. It's just like even this Time Snap potion that came out, it looks like a kind of thing pouring into a bubble, They're beautiful, but holy crud, they're expensive. It's like if you don't get them at the event, I just...
Yep, it makes a collector's brain kind of go haywire. You start sparking.
I mean, there's easily $1,000 worth of cards on here that I'd like to get that I'm not sure it's worth me investing into those at the moment. Not because they're not worth getting. It's just, if you're only going to spend so much, money per X week, month, year time frame on the game, then you got to kind of map out what you're doing. And I'm going to start trying to save up for a bigger position to buy some of the Rosetta stuff, because I'd really like to see what kind of comes out in that, because there'll be expansion slot cards, right? And back to let's wrap up with that. Let's finish out the whole cast with what's your thought on the expansion slot versus the old mentality of like Dusk Till Dawn, where it's a singular set. What is there a pro, a con? What's your long-term outlook on stuff like that?
I think the expansion slot is and I'm a very big believer in this one. This is like my own personal belief, of course, my own personal opinion, but I love the expansion slot over the expansion sets.
Oh, okay.
I love it. I think I approach it more from a player standpoint of, there was a time, it was right after Uprising came out, right? Where we went from, I believe it was July. It was July of 2022. It was July of 2022 all the way up to like March of 2023. So that's like a long time, a very long time. And that is how big the gap was, where Uprising was the most recent draft format. And the reason for that was because of the expansion set in between, which was Dynasty, right?
Yeah.
So it went Uprising, Dynasty, Outsiders. By the time Outsiders came out, I think I just never wanted to see Uprising ever again. From like a player standpoint, because like I had drafted it so many times. I had like one of the big draws, of course, was that Flesh and Blood's like release schedule and the release cadence was so much better spread out than say Magic's was, right? Because like let's be honest, like Magic, great game, but you got like every other week there's a new set kind of deal. There's a new format to learn. There's something going on, and that's fine, whatever. But when it comes to Flesh and Blood, it was like, all right, I've had enough of Uprising. I've done enough Uprising. I cannot rise up anymore.
Those dragons, though, I didn't really collect the marvels until kind of they
Right.
sunk down in price, but I'm glad that I've at least managed to get most of them. I still need to get the Majestic versions, but some of those marvels are beautiful.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it was a great set. It was honestly, it was a great start set for Fab 2.0. And but when it comes to the expansion sets, it's just sometimes it would feel like such a lull in the pace of the game's competitive side, and even the pace of like playing at the LGS, because we try to do a lot, and by a lot I mean we do different formats, we do draft nights, we do sealed every now and again, and it was essentially at that point we were going all the way back to WTR. We were so sick of Uprising, we were just doing WTR drafts, we were doing Tails drafts, we were doing anything other than Uprising because we had done so much of it because of that period of time. And Dusk Till Dawn came out, and it brought some good upgrades for Levia. I mean, it brought us Levia Redeemed. It brought Bolton some new cards to really play around with and some new systems to really play around with. But it didn't really do much for like the overall metagame, And I can kind of see it from a business perspective of, okay, yes, we have to spend more time developing the draft sets, and we have to spend more time developing them that way. But there's a lot less, I guess, quote unquote, like fodder in the game, and a lot like cards that are a little super situational and maybe someday 10 years from now might be playable for specific reasons. And then you have this system with expansion slot where you're able to give support to classes that may have not had it in a long time, or may need something to kind of boost them up, and you can be a little more like targeted with that than you can out of a full set.
My only question long term for that is the first expansion slot came out in, I believe it was Bright Lights.
I think it was Bright Lights.
So currently, Bright Lights is in production. Heavy Hitters, Part the Mistveil, and Rosetta will be in production. That's at least 4 sets.
Sure.
So circling back to when things get out of printed, will some of these maybe harder to find cards like in Bright Lights that are expansion slot for other classes, will they become like the super rare chase spiky cards, or do you think they're going to have to find a way to put those into ancillary products or into these like CC decks is a good example of trying to get those back out in the environment? Like what's your thought on maybe that kind of approach? Is that something you feel they might try to do, or they're going to try to uphold the value?
So I think it might end up being situational. Because, I mean, we have heroes that come and go. Like, we have heroes at LL. We have so many factors that you're almost trying to predict the future in such a way that you're not really able to put an exact number on it. Especially with how many heroes we have throughout the game currently and how many classes we have in the game. Some of these cards could be more spiky than others. I mean, we saw Already Dead from Bright Lights, the Assassin expansion card. That card spiked. I think it was in Heavy Hitters when Coercive Tendency, which is the Arachne spec, when that card got spoiled from the expansion slot of Heavy Hitters, Already Dead from Bright Lights spiked up to like $40-$50.
Yeah, it's hard to not buy the spikes too.
Like, yeah, because you have Uzuri now, and you have New and Uzuri, and it's a good card. It is just a good card. It can banish a piece of equipment if it's played against incorrectly against Uzuri. Like, you have a lot of and that's just an example of the expansion slot working, quote unquote.
Well, and what's crazy to me, right, is I'm looking at this from the class perspective of, let's say, mechanologist, right? Things that I care about. Well, at a certain point in the very first one in Bright Lights, there were no mechanologist expansion cards because the whole set was mechanologist.
Right.
The next set, Heavy Hitters, had one mechanologist card. It's an Evo, so again, more Teklevossen related, technically. I guess it could be used in other decks, but there is at least one card in my class that I'd care about there, so I need to probably get those. And then really Part the Misfale, really cranking it up a notch for my class, right? Like woot woot, I have five cards I need to get from this set.
Yeah.
So it's like that was a mini release for Mechanologist.
Yeah, and you got you got Supercell as well too.
Oh, Supercell is going to change the way I build my deck. See, when at Baltimore, I actually ran in the UPF tournament there, which is the one that they did that whole silly Rudy 6.9.
I remember that.
Or that was madness to watch in person. But I was playing a Dash version because there was no Dash IO at this point. A Dash Nitro Mechanoid build where I managed to actually transform into Nitro Mechanoid. I was very happy to be able to have that happen, even though I still lost, even though I got knocked out. Don't care. I got to transform into freaking Nitro Mechanoid at a UPF event. I was just like beyond ecstatic. Supercell is going to allow me to like fix the whole oops, I boosted away my Nitro Mechanoid, or it allows me to run less of them. So I think that there's got to be a reason they put this in here. There's got to be a reason, and I think that Nitro Mech is a valid way to sneak in. I think that's my hidden tech for like the competitive scene. I can see someone finding a way to make this just massively like, run like, just like crazy. What's that dang movie with the blue aliens? Gosh darn it. It made so much money in the box office.
Blue aliens.
Very the suits where it's not the aliens, but it's like, oh my god, what is it? It's like in another world. They go there and they have they jack into the animals with their headpiece, and they like form the tentacle bond, and they like Avatar, that one. I don't know why I can't remember the damn name, but it's like Jesus.
There you go. No, we're good.
So we found it. But like, I feel like in a weird way, like if you think of like the whole mech suit where they're like running and like they have this like thing, I could just see Supercell being that envision of like it's pedal to the metal Nitro Mechanoid with like, maximum velocity, and then you just basically flip the switch and turn into the mech and just hammer town. So
yeah, dude.
Pedal to the metal kind of a thing.
It's fun, and like Vincent got a card out of the Part the Misfale expansion slot.
Yeah, the eloquent
eulogy.
Rune Gate.
I mean, it's a good card. It's a Rune Gate 1. I mean, you can play it as a single card in hand. You can just play it out. Like it's a 1 for 5. I mean, it's not terribly on rate, but the effect could come in handy for Vincent's later turns, which is help. It's helpful.
Sure.
And as somebody who's been on the Vincent Cope train for a long time, we need all the help we can get. But other than that, expansion slots, it's got its pros, its cons. End of the day, I think we would all just like to see is more cards, for our classes and for the things that we like to play, right?
Absolutely. And, back to the whole aging in Flesh and Blood, we're still in the early stages, right? If this is 4 sets a year, doesn't sound like a lot, but if we're on set 14 in another 3 years, everything up till heavy hitters technically would be the first 50% of the game.
Yeah.
So like it's insane to start thinking about that, but as the cadence is becoming more common and we're getting there, WTR gets further and further in that rear view mirror, Uprising, Outsiders, all these sets, there'll be hearkenings back to it, I'm sure, but at a certain point, even the old bulk chaff onesie twosie cards, some of those, unless they reprint them, which I am glad that they're not reinventing the wheel with the same name twice, right? So they brought back things in Part the Misfale, which were WTR cards. They brought back things in, other sets that are basically reprints of some of the older, what was it? I think it was a Crucible of War rare that was, it was Guard the Line or something. I found one that was bent the other day when I was going through bulk. But it used to be a $2 or so. Yeah, Reinforce the Line. That used to be a pretty expensive, crew card, but it's in heavy hitters, right? So they've reprinted that, which is nice because they're not making the card twice. They're doing it, and they're just reusing the design space they already have. So
yeah, and it's a great thing. Like Nimblism and I think Nimble Strike and Part the Misfale, like perfect set for it, right? Like, you know, assassins love nimblism, you know, ninjas like nimblism, like that. It's just a good staple generic card that it pops up when it needs to pop up.
Heck yeah. And I love that they've brought back more generics. I know that a lot of people are kind of hoping at some point in the future we get away from the whole generics, but right now that's the only way my merchant can survive, right? I can make other like adjudicator decks and stuff because you have to rely on those generic cards to make those function unless there's more class specific or even technically Bard right now. Yeah, right. There's some more because of the UPF side, but there really isn't a bunch of, you know, crazy stuff out there. So
yeah.
I think I'll wrap up with the final question, which is if there's anything you'd like to share with the community at large, or any words of wisdom or sentiment, what would that message be?
Man, I'm got put on the spot there. No. A huge sentiment is that, like, the philosophy behind Flesh and Blood is to play great games, right? And you know, it's a great game, and
not on
if I had any wisdom to impart on you, don't arsenal your block cards. Because you can't play them. You can't play your block cards out of Arsenal. Stop arsenaling your block cards.
Or Chi. I did that during pre-release.
Or Chi, yeah. Don't do that either. Those are my words of wisdom. And I will only say this because I've seen it happen. And when it happens, your opponent looks down, and then, or like you look down and you just feel bad. It just feels bad. Don't do that.
Fair enough.
That being said, that's my wisdom.
Excellent words.
I don't have much else.
No, that's perfect. So, well, that will wrap up episode 3 of Geek Speak. So, thank you very much for joining in. Maybe in the future, if you have some time, we can bring you back in for some other ones, because I'm hoping to kind of make this more of a regular thing. I'm going to try to do the whole, you know, flesh and plod thing. Flesh and plod, P-L-O-D, plod. Yeah. But I'm gonna try to make sure that I can keep the consistency going as much as I can. And go from there. Yeah. So I love talking with people. I love hearing other aspects of, you know, your area up there, right? Totally different ecosystem than what it is where I'm at. So
yeah, but I mean, like, it's all for the love of the game.
Absolutely. So until next time, may your games be fun and your friendships grow. Cheers, and talk to you later.
Later, everybody.
And that's a wrap. Woo!
Awesome, dude.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, any tech person will say for every good piece of tech, there's always a good failure that sets you back on course. So
yeah, you know, like 4 or 5 failure points. Just in. This is not much of a studio space. This is the basement.
this is my former garage, is where I'm currently at.
So yeah, you're already past that project.
Oh yeah, I had to get permits to redo the flooring. It's 18 inches off the ground. It's
oh wow.
It's fun. No, my little dog, by the way, this little nugget, this little 5-pound Morky nugget. He wants to participate so much. He also really wants the food and fries that I have here. He wants to just, there you go. See, that's he's very food motivated.
Yeah, no, same. Same, dude.
All right, I'm going to attempt. This will be episode 3 is what we're going to be in here for. I'm going to set a timer, and I'm going to try to go for target about an hour, but then honestly, I'm sure I'll go way over because the other one was over an hour and a half. But I'll try to start winding down toward that, at least the 45-minute to an hour mark. And if we go over and we're jiving well, I'll just keep going. But I don't want to. I've been told people do not listen if it is longer than about an hour. That's apparently something that I'm learning as time has gone on. So I will try to maintain the spirit of keeping it within a margin of usefulness. So
works for me, man. I'm ready to rock.
Rock on. I don't think I really need a clap trap because I'm not doing multicam syncing. I don't know why. I'm so used to doing that everywhere now. It's like